Yes.
Are you able to? Okay. Thank you, Charles, because you touched on many of the things that this whole Sahavas is about. And it's very touching. Like I said, see so many people, we didn't expect this many people would show up, but it's fantastic. And I'm very touched. And we originally called this gathering the Generation XYZ Sahavas. And we came up with this kind of zany topic. It might be catchy, but it turned out that some of the baby boomers, that is my generation, thought that they weren't invited. So strictly speaking, to include them, we needed to add a W. And so the generation WXYZ Sahavas, it is. So we thought it would be fun and enlightening to get all the generations together under one roof and see how each of us remembers Baba throughout the day, how he shows up. And also with an eye to seeing our differences and our unique, our similarities and unique differences. And hopefully we can learn from each other, as Charles has expressed so clearly. So we're meeting all together now, and then we will go into breakout groups with people of the different generations in each group. It'll be very informal, and hopefully, as I said, it will be fun and will enable us even to get to know some others that we might not otherwise have a chance to meet. And a part of this inspiration for this gathering came from Baba's close disciple, Erich. He was asked back in 1970, is Baba going to become a religion? And Erich said Baba was adamant that it not become a religion. And when he asked, well, how can we avoid this? He said, if his lovers would get together in small groups and share their mystical experiences, it could be averted. This was said, right after Baba dropped his body, but later on, I think he would have said, if we'd share our personal inner experiences of Baba, it could be averted, because can you imagine how impossible it would be to create a religion or a set of norms or any dogma when there are so many different, unique, and personal approaches to Baba. So in the coming 2 hours, please feel free to share your experiences of how you remember Baba during the day, even quirky, whimsical, humorous, spontaneous ways you do, even your homemade prayers, besides all the conventional things we might do in remembering Baba. How does our darling Baba show up for you? And if there's time, it would be interesting to hear how the different generations envision how Baba lovers might be getting together in the future, whether to meet primarily online or meet in person from time to time in homes or in the Baba centers and the places Baba has been in your respective countries, or in restaurants like so many of you do. How do you envision the Baba gatherings going forward from here? Because of the pandemic, many of the in-person Baba gatherings were discontinued, and as a result, many of you went online to meet. And the Zoom meetings actually saved the day and answered the longing we have to continue to be together, to hear from each other. In fact, people from all over the world were able to get together in ways that were not possible before. We've had like music concerts, discussion groups, talks, dance classes, cooking classes, art classes, poetry readings, all manner of things. And it's like incredible how this, the ingenuity that this pandemic gave birth to. But what happened, this is what I want to stress, what happened as a result, the younger generations were much more technically adept than the older generations. And they found it very easy to get together online with each other. And so there weren't so many intergenerational gatherings happening. But it's our view this is, Margi and Lisa, we kind of feel that this gave the impression that the different generations were drifting apart. But we feel this is more of an illusion. In fact, we are all doing the same thing, waking up in the morning and trying to remember Baba throughout the day, each in our own way, each generation remembering Baba in a way that relates and fits in with their circumstances. And so it'd be great fun and joy to hear all the many ways of living for Baba. And don't be shy, like Charles was saying, we want to hear your Baba, your version, because that's the true one that you can enjoy waking up to every morning. So I'll leave that there and enjoy and have fun, and I'll go back to Margi or Elisa. This was kind of like I say, we thought this would be great if we could get more of the generations together under one roof. We would find out we're really not that different from each other, and we could have fun hearing how each one approaches remembering Baba. So, Margi.
Yes, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to Elisa for a moment because, sorry, the dog is barking in the background. So Elisa has a few little prompts just to help us maybe get some ideas started about how to facilitate this conversation. We're going to break everybody up into groups of 5, the best evenly we can, splitting up ages. And then we're going to have 35 minutes in that group, and we'll come back together. So we won't share right away from that. After our second set of breakout groups, we'll be able to share that. So if there are things that stuck out to you, maybe write them down or take note of it, because we can share after about that. But Elisa, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll split up into those breakout groups.
And let me say, you'll be in the group for maybe 35 minutes or something like that, unless Margi feels we should be in there a little longer. We can get a hold of Peter Goodman to extend. And introduce yourselves, there's the question that's posed that Elisa will read out, but also, get to know each other.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm just going to read a little bit. Jeff had come up with a series of questions, and I don't know if you all had a chance to see them before, just to sort of get you sort of thinking about where you find your Baba in your life. So I'm just going to kind of just read a few excerpts from this so you can kind of get that prompt going. So how do you bring Baba into your day? When you wake up, do you think of Baba first thing? Or do you prefer to have coffee and come to your senses first? What is Baba like to you? Is he playful, motherly, fatherly, urging you on with confidence? Do you speak to him, expressing your concerns, uncensored complaints? Does he have a clear and vivid personality, more human to you than divine, impersonal, like a warm, pervading presence? Do you have certain practices in the morning? Are you drawn to saying prayers, or do you have homemade prayers? Are you drawn to saying Baba's name inwardly? Do you dress your soul with Baba? On your way to work, do you have certain ways to remember him? Do you play recordings or talks and songs? At work, do you usually keep Baba to yourself, or do you share him with your coworkers? Or are there some negative reactions that you've had in your dedication to Baba? If you're retired, how does Baba unfold in your day? Or if you are home with the kids, how do you bring Baba into your day? At home or at work, how does Baba show up in your evenings? Before going to bed, do you do some type of meditation or prayer? On your days off, do you just unwind and relax and spontaneously think of Baba informally? How does he show up in your decision-making? Are you able to notice your natural impulses and allow yourself to think of Baba and to help you make decisions? Do you experience Baba's companionship throughout the day? And what helps you in this? So remember, as we think of these ways that Baba shows up in our lives, let's do as Charles said, listen with the ears of the heart. and listen for those differences and similarities that we all bring in our unique relationship with Baba.
And so we're all going to go into breakout groups, and hopefully you'll meet people that you've never met before.
We got to give credit to our tech host, and also Michelle McKeever is helping. So it's Michelle and Peter Goodman who are helping behind the scenes. Peter,
all right, breakout rooms are ready. When you get you'll get a message and press yes to accept, and it'll take you to your breakout rooms. And they
you do anything. So a lot of these things I realize, like with what you're saying, because there's a lot of mind involvement or something, like you can't particularly remember him in the middle of it. Like I just try to stop for a little bit and remember him before, then jump into it and, figure I might not remember his name, but if I'm like at least 100% focused on it, it'll be like that Zen, just, focus being lost, and who knows what that might like. And then when you're done and you get back out of the whoa, just, remember him again. I've been a nurse for 14 years. So like when I was working in ICU and a lot of these atmospheres that were just crazy, I mean, I don't even know what would happen. I'd before work go down to the chapel in the hospital, meditate for a little bit, get onto the floor, get in report. It's just stuff happening everywhere. And then, sometimes 8 and 9 hours would go by and you wouldn't even know what happened. You're running here, this person's coding this, that, doctors come around, push this person down to CAT scan, well, this is going on with this one. And then it just, I wouldn't remember Baba and that stuff a lot. And then finally, like when there would be a break and it's like, oh, I can, eat for 10 minutes or this or that, you'd sit down and then it's like, okay, now remember him again here. And I just realized like, wow, it's probably not going to get any better than that in this environment. I don't think it's going to even be practical to, it's like you're lost in the moment. But I guess I came to terms and realized like, wow, maybe that is the spiritual practice, is just being surrendered into that, and if you catch yourself reacting and, yelling or getting, I try to catch myself in the moment if I was like getting weird and stuff like that. But, a lot of times you'd have that stuff come up and, just have to let it go real quick because you're on to the next thing and, 2 seconds later. But no, I feel what you're saying too, because in Baba's disciple, Mandali member Minu Karasa's book, Baba had him join the police department and he never felt connected to it. He's like, felt like a total outcast. Like everybody else was part of this thing and he just couldn't fit into that culture and couldn't relate to it. And, Baba made him go through that stuff forever. And then finally, after a while, Baba granted his wish to be able to do something else. Oh, thank God. And he wanted to be a businessman. And then he went into that and it was a total mess. And he like lost all his money. He's like, oh, the police department was actually better than this. And
oh, man.
It was just such a thing. Like, my God, he's even making the Mandali go through this stuff where they feel totally out of place. And it's just a mess and they can't relate to it. And who knows if there's some lesson in it, but it's hard. It is hard stuff.
It is definitely, I would say, like you were saying, I think I do sometimes catch myself and remind myself, just do your best and leave the rest. And not to be so interested in per se the outcome. That's what I find myself doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Just do your best. Whatever this is, just do your best. Do it with as good a heart as you can. And then hope it works out for the best, right? You never know.
Yeah.
And then just kind of let it go, because not be too attached with what the result may be.
That's awesome.
For me, my office environment is like full of like really big personalities and very, very high level creative people, and the top, the top of the top in their field. And it's all about the communication and teamwork and building things and creating things together. And so when things are kind of humdrum is when I like have the experience that you described, when things are just kind of like going at a very steady clip and you almost like tune out too much. But when it's either going really beautifully and it's just like, wow, like this is crazy what's happening, or the opposite where things are just off the rails and people are like at each other's throat and like undermining one another because they can't get over. I see Baba in those extremes. It just, to me, that's
how
where.
How do you see Baba in those extremes?
Because sometimes it's just so ridiculous, like what's happening that you can't even. And you're like, Baba, this is ridiculous. Like, you know, something will happen and they're just like, you know, they're causing way more work for themselves or whatever, or even I'm causing more work for myself. Or the opposite, where it's just like, it couldn't be more, everyone's in sync and things are just like falling into place in a way that seems impossible, you know. But otherwise, in the middle is where I struggle more.
Do you actively work to think about Baba, or it just naturally happens in your day?
I mean, I guess I do because I have a morning and evening practice that's pretty locked in. And then beyond that, I just try to stretch it as far as I can by like little crutches, like photos everywhere. Yeah. But you know, it still slips.
How about you all?
You know, I don't personally, like, I think my experience is more like yours, where like my attention is 100% on my work and I'm not thinking about anything spiritual during the work day. I did have a job, you know, I've done other jobs where, you know, like I used to clean the tables and stuff like that, and then I would, you know, do the name with the clean the table and all that, and that was really rewarding for that time.
Sweet of you, Brian.
But you know, nowadays, because I'm program computers, whatever, so I'm not 100% thinking about the code or you know whatever's on the computer, not anything spiritual.
Yeah.
You know, but we all have that teacher, Mickey Singer. He teaches us that that's actually 100% fine. You know, if you put your consciousness 100% on your work, as long as you're not thinking about yourself, as long as it's not personal, which the personal stuff does come up too, and then your job then is just to let it go and put it to the side, and then put your consciousness back 100% on your work. And then that's, you know, as far as you know, our understanding is that's the highest you can do at that point in time. You know,
that's what you're aiming towards.
Yeah. So I do, in that way, I do still kind of see it as a practice, or I think I probably, you know, maybe do better at having it be like a dedication, like, okay, I'm dedicating my work to you, you know. That's what today's about, and doing that. But for me, it's still more just like 100% trying to put my consciousness on what I'm doing.
It's so true what you said, Eric. Like when I'm doing stuff like cooking, it's so easy and effortless to 100% have it be Baba, but we're cleaning the table or whatever. But the work is just maybe
I think it feels
more thought is involved.
So it seems like it's harder, right? Like, okay, well, people who have the manual labor jobs, I've often thought that, like, other people that have a manual, like, I really want that.
I know.
I want to go back to cleaning tables, because then I could just be, you know, totally.
The hand can do one thing, the brain can do another thing.
But I think that there must be something beneficial about learning to put your consciousness 100% in the mental work too. Otherwise, we wouldn't all be doing that, you know.
Right.
Baba would have us all doing something completely different, you know. So. There must be something of value in doing that kind of work, even though it seems harder and maybe a little bit less spiritually rewarding sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I also think it's interesting because, you know, sometimes I sort of, like, I'm not an old Baba, 25 years, some of these people think. But for me, I also maybe placate myself by saying, well, this is the way I am, and Baba, you made me this way, so deal with it. You know, I can do that. Sometimes it's like, okay, this is who I am. I don't think about this stuff during the day. I think about it on occasion. You know, I get together with Baba lovers, and that's a good time to think about it. But I would say, yep, this is my personality. And you have given me this personality, so this is all you get. I sometimes do that, you know.
I do think there's real truth to that, because I mean, even in a lot of the Baba books, I mean, how the Mandali had different personalities. Like Elizabeth seemed like she wasn't as much of like a people person, was a little more introverted and like to deal with the bills and this and that. And then, yeah, I forgot who it was that was more social. If it was Narina, and like I think she was, and it just, they had their like personality quirks and traits where certain ones, it was like really hard to function in this setting because of their.
So I hope that went well and everybody got to, oh, am I still muted? No, you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If you are unmuted still, just if you could mute yourself just to keep everything in the flow. So we are going to give you guys some questions, which I'm going to put into the chat just so we don't forget them, because it's a set of 3 different questions. But Elisa, Jeff, and I have come up with some questions that are more focused towards talking about the different generations and connecting with them. Is that Dilruba? Is somebody setting up from Dilruba?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Where are we? Yeah, it's like a while. I didn't know where it was sending us.
We are in Myrtle Beach right now.
Everyone's here now? Everyone?
Yes, yeah. Everybody's in the main room.
We're back.
Yeah. So I hope that allowed everybody to just connect and talk about their own relationship with Baba. So our next step, I'm trying to find Elisa on the screen. There's so many of us, which is awesome, but I can't.
I'm right here.
There you are. Okay.
I know, lost in the crowd.
Yes. So like I said, Elisa and I came up with a couple of questions with Jeff to go over, and we're really hoping that these questions facilitate more dialogue about working together and to share leadership within the Baba community so that we can understand each other more. These questions we're not trying to get anything figured out today. We're just listening for similarities and differences, and then be sure to kind of take notes on, what stands out to you and maybe how we're far more similar than we realize and how we really want the same things. Michelle McKeever, who is on here, her and I run a podcast called God in the Real World. And we just did a 5-part series on the perceptions of disconnection, which basically we interviewed different people. Some of the podcast people are actually on here, like Michael Caine. I know Diane and Terry are here, Elisa, obviously, asking, what they perceive the perceptions of disconnection to be amongst the generations. And the number one thing that we really found is that there is no difference. The thing that connects us all is taking that personal interest in one another, because we have no power to control whether Baba comes into our lives or not. But we're here in Baba's fold for some reason, right? And if we can all get to know each other as brothers and sisters, I personally believe that a lot of this intergenerational divide doesn't actually exist. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elisa to, share anything that she has. But then while she's doing that, I'm going to type the questions that she's reading out into the chat so that we have them during the breakout groups.
So I'll read the questions too then, Margi.
Yeah.
Margi.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I just want to, first of all, I just want to say the podcast that Margi and Michelle do is awesome. You all should listen to it. I mean, every episode is just very, very wonderful and just really gives an insight into, how the younger generation is bringing Baba into their everyday world. And I think that it is, I think Charles said it all really in that I just love the idea of the fresh dispensation of Baba's love coming in, and that we, it's constantly evolving. Times are evolving. Everything is evolving. And the supposed disconnection between us, I think, is more a matter of perception and a matter of conditioning. And so what our hope is in doing this is really to get these conversations going so that each side can really start to speak about what these perceptions are so we can hear them. I mean, we have to bring them out so we could really begin to hear them and really, we're in a time right now of everything is changing. Old concepts are breaking down. So everything that happens in the Baba world is a microcosm of what's happening out there. So I feel like this whole issue that it's coming to the surface now, finally, after so long, and that we're opening the door to being able to talk more freely about it, is really his gift. And it is a reflection of what's happening in the world around us. He's giving us an opportunity right now, I feel, to expand beyond what the ways in which we limit ourselves or we think it's possible. So when we go through these questions, Margi and I really tried to make these questions as general as possible and as ability to go in both directions. So like the older generation posing it to the younger generation and vice versa. So we're hoping that people will just really allow themselves to just drop in and be honest about whatever it is they feel. So, okay, so I'll just read out the questions. So the first one is, what would make you feel invited, safe, valued, and welcomed by each generation? What are your thoughts regarding the younger generation taking more of a leadership role? And this is for the older people.
Lisa, would you repeat the questions a couple of times, please?
Sure.
So they're
thank you.
They are in the chat. We know that I've written them out and they're in the chat that you guys can look at. At least I can repeat them, but I just want to make that clear for everyone.
Yeah, and I'll repeat them because they're not that many, but it's just they're good. They're, and you don't have to feel you have to answer all the questions, but whatever comes to you. So the second one was, again, this is the older generation, posed to the older generation. What are your thoughts regarding the younger generation taking a more leadership role? And then the flip would be, what would make you want to step into those roles of leadership for the younger people? How could the older generation yield so that they could maybe mentor and help the younger generation step into these leadership roles? Because I do think there's some, trusting that has to happen. And then finally, what do you wish to share with the younger generation / older generation regarding your relationship with Baba that maybe you tend to not necessarily share? And how could more intergenerational sharing be facilitated going forward? Because we really, really want to brainstorm about that. How do we, keep nurturing these conversations and bringing us together? So shall I read them one more time? Okay. So what would make you feel invited, safe, valued, and welcomed by each generation? What are your thoughts regarding the younger generation taking more of a leadership role? And what would make you want to step want to feel invited to step into those roles of leadership for the younger folks? How could the older generation yield so that they could mentor and help the younger generation step into roles of leadership? And what do you wish to share with the younger generation / older generation regarding your relationship with Baba? And how could more intergenerational sharing be facilitated going forward? Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. So before we break out into these groups, I do want to open the floor and just say, let's all listen with the ears of our hearts, as Charles and Elisa said, because I know that this can be a charged topic and there are a lot of feelings, and we're not encouraging you to not talk about the feelings, but let's try to meet that background of love first. And, we might have different perceptions, and the whole idea for this to happen is to build more connection and to get to know each other better. And, we're doing right now, Michelle is splitting up the groups, trying to even out as best as we can, at least getting one young person into each group. But if you're in a group that maybe doesn't have a young person, which we're hoping won't happen, but if it does, we can still ask these questions, right? Because you getting that conversation started about, oh, what do I want to share with the younger generation about my relationship with Baba? Just you guys talking about that amongst yourselves may spark the longing to go to a Sahavas, at the LA Center or at the Center of Myrtle Beach, and share that part of your relationship. So let me just check in with Michelle and see how she's doing, if we're ready to go.
This is weird because I have my headphones in and I'm on 2 devices. So I'm making the breakout rooms, and what I will say is I'm doing my best. I also at a certain point, what is age? So I want to throw that in there. What I think is young or old might be very different from what you think is younger or older, which might be something you want to talk about in your group if that comes up. But I just wanted to say that because I did my best. But you might be like, there's not a young enough person in there. And then maybe think, maybe you are that young person in there. So so I just want you to trust that. And as Margi said, we trust Baba in this, and I'm grateful to be able to help with a little part of the Sahavas in the breakout groups. But if they doesn't look right, just talk to Baba, because it's his fault, not mine.
When also, Michelle, we have to think that there's probably at least three or at least three, maybe four different like sort of generational gaps here and throughout this, how many people are here at the Sahavas, the age range. So
yeah, we have a huge range, which is so awesome. And then also, I know it's kind of a lot of questions. Like there are 3 concepts, that are to fit in that way. But if you don't get to all the questions in your group, it's not the end of the world. Like if collectively in the group, you really want to talk about one question more than others, that's totally fine. There's no real structure to this. We just want to get the conversation started. I see a hand from Steve. Oh, you're muted, Steve.
First of all, Margi, I just wanted to say hi again, because it was a pleasure meeting you at the LA Sahavas. And hi. You're really a fun person. So I just want to say that. But when you were talking at the beginning about the generational divides, and what struck me is, at the time that I became aware of and then started to get into Meher Baba, which was, somewhere around the early 70s, it was just coming out of an existential shift in, in kind of world consciousness. And I would say that we're going through another one of those shifts right now. Yes. And so it's your age, the people that are of your age that are heavily involved in all that, and in all this mishigash that we're involved with. So I don't know, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you for sharing. And also on that note, as far as group sharing, like Steve just did, take note of really what sticks out, because after these set of breakout groups, we'll be able to come together and have, if there's something that really stuck out from your breakout group, you can share that with the whole Sahavas crew and committee kind of thing. Not committee, but you know what I mean? The whole group. So Michelle, are we good to go?
All right. Have fun.
All right. It'll be about 35 minutes. Oh,
you're muted, Masha. You're muted. You're talking but muted.
Yep. I had a picture of Mira and Baba next to each other on the window in the Hermitage, and it said Meher Baba. And they were going to be one of the next thing it came to me that they're fused, Yeah. Anyway, say Baba.
Hey Baba. Well, hi everybody, and welcome back. If everybody could just mute now. I know some people got unmuted and there's always a bunch of background noise. So just make sure that your camera's muted now. And I popped in and out of a couple of different rooms because I was looking in the main room to see if anybody got left out. And the conversations that were happening in all the different rooms were totally and completely different. So Elisa and I want to be able to open up the floor to everybody now. And so if there is something that you want to share from your group, just put your hand up. So the schedule for the rest of the day is technically this discussion group goes until, hold on, I'm on West Coast time. So at 3 p.m. East Coast time. And then from 3 to 5, we're supposed to have a break, but the Zoom room will be open if you guys just want to talk. And then at 5 p.m. So West Coast, it's going to be 2 p.m. There'll be a really short like Baba meditation and then open sharing. So I'll facilitate more of this conversation all together. but we can just, you know, kind of do some highlights reels right now. All right, we've got Shanie's hand up.
Hi, everyone. Jay Baba. Hi. So happy to be here. So when I'm kind of like in between, I feel like the both generations. And when I was in my early 30s at the LA Center, I was asked to participate. I was asked to be on the board. I mean, there were a lot of board positions available and they needed, you know, warm bodies, but I was asked to help. And so one of the best ways to get generations together and the younger generation to get into more of a leadership is to actually, whoever's in leadership, is to just ask involvement. I know it's happening in LA. It happened at the LA Sahavas recently. This is facilitating it, and I imagine it's happening in Myrtle Beach, but I would just start asking to participate in the things that would be traditionally more of the older generation. And then you get that connection. Yeah.
Thank you, Shani. I think that's so important too, because asking on either end just makes everybody feel seen. And so thank you. Thank you so much for saying that.
Sure.
All right, let's go to Jeff. Jeff, you're muted.
Okay. One of the things that came up in our group, and it's common, is you know, the older generation letting go of being in charge and letting the younger people kind of come in. And but when I started working, and I have an example here in Myrtle Beach at the center, I started working here, and Kitty and Elizabeth, who'd been with Baba all those years, they actually did not micromanage. They let us come in. We were all young in our 20s. We did the programs, we did the activities, we did the just a second, I'm on Zoom. In the middle of and they didn't want to lay down what we were supposed to do, because they wanted us to learn how to figure out how Baba would want us to carry out this work. If we just followed what they were doing, then we're having to obey them. We're supposed to be learning how to obey Baba, to be able to tune in their intuitions and carry out a work. If we had done something that was really out of line, they would have, really out of line, they would have said something. But we actually we didn't do anything that was like untoward. But we learned how to kind of do this for Baba, and not, because Elizabeth asked Willie David one time, "Who are you working for?" And he kind of was baffled. It was just in the other room here. He said, "Baba," and she said, "Yes, we're all working for Baba." So this idea of having to let go and take chances, because like I say, Kitty and Elizabeth, we were in our 20s. And we basically ran all the activities and everything that happened on the center. And we managed to not get imprisoned or jailed for what we did. Anyway, that's our kind of feedback.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, we got Joe up next.
I raised an issue that's has been bothering me for a couple of years related to generations, and that's the young adult Sahavas, which is coming up. I totally approve of the teen Sahavas, but the young adult Sahavas, I know the participants has been going, I have a great time, but I'm excluded because I'm a baby boomer. I can't go to that. I don't have what I would like to see is Sahavas for everyone, and the person Michael from LA group is on the board there. They have their Sahavas is open to everybody. So I have very mixed feelings about this, because I think it's great that from what I've heard, the people, the participants of the young adult Sahavas, ages 18 to 43, have a wonderful bonding experience. But at the same time, I have this, my feeling is it's reinforcing this generation difference. It's like underneath it is, I can, if I'm 18 to 43, I can bond and share my Baba feelings best with people of my own age. And it seems, and I think the whole purpose of what we're talking about is to break free of that. And I would love to see that time period where they're having young adult Sahavas. Because the center only has the teen Sahavas and the young adult Sahavas. I would like to see a Sahavas for everybody instead. That would really appeal. 14 to 104, and just open it up. So that's just something I shared. It's sort of been on my mind for a while.
I was going to say to Joe and I talked about this earlier, but right now the center is pretty much for our generation. So it's instead of a young adult Sahavas, this whole thing is almost 365 days. It's it's a lot of it is an older generation experience, but so he's not thing out right now, but I would like, but it would be nice. But Buzz was kind of thinking it'd be really nice to have the intergenerational weekends from time to time, and then people could sign up, and it would be great.
Yeah. And I also want to point out that Jeff, Elisa, and my intention for creating this was to create in-person intergenerational gatherings, right? This is like a pilot, basically, of how is this going to go, and then can we do this on the centers? And that's something that we've talked to Buzz about, like, oh, this is happening, with hopes that something can come in person so that it can be facilitated. Diane, I see your hand up, but I want to go to Michelle because I know that she's on all committees of Sahavas. And so I just want to get her to respond to that.
Well, my favorite expression right now, and I'm in my car and in my workout gear, so I feel very vulnerable right now on the screen. But my favorite expression right now is both and. And I think a lot about the idea of it's a both and. So I'm with you, Joe. Like I think when I hit 43, I'm like, well, wait, how can I still come back? And as somebody who attends the Young Adult Sahavas and is a leadership, part of the leadership for it, what I think is important and what's special about that group is like, we are all figuring out our lives in ways that it's really special to have that time together in our community, because we're all over the place. Like, we don't see each other a lot. We're not on Zoom all the time with each other. And I think I have a lot of value that comes out of that event. The other part of that is I do think that there is more opportunity for intergenerational moments. And I think it's conversations like this, where we're really vulnerable for each other and telling each other what we need, that will allow those types of events to grow. And because right now both the youth Sahavas and the young adult Sahavas are out of a specific need that has been asked by young people and has been created by young people. And so I think that as we have these conversations and we actually agree that we want to engage in this intergenerational way and get to know each other on a more personal level, I think that that's what will start to shift the tides a bit. And I think that that requires us knowing what we really need when we're showing up for each other. And I know for me, like, I need curiosity about who I am as an individual and to feel like I have value in the Baba community. Even though I never met Baba or any of the Mandali or have read all the books that I should have read by now. So those are kind of the things that I think about. I think we're moving towards that as a community of being able to have these intergenerational spaces. And I think it'll take a little bit of, like, for me, I think about, like, are we okay with people having access to spaces, even though we can't be there, because we know that it'll help grow our community? And if that's the truth, then also how can I create the spaces where I feel really welcome and valued, so that it there's no exclusion. We all understand it's just part of how we build our community as a whole. Those are my like unfiltered thoughts about it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. And something I just want to add on with, this is totally Michelle's idea, but you know, I also see this this Zoom gathering as like a springboard for a lot of other stuff. And just so all of you guys know, Michelle has this dream of creating Young at Heart Sahavas, where the young people actually put on a Sahavas for the older generation. So it's not that you're excluded from the conversation, right? This is, I do feel that sometimes there's a perception that the young adults and the youth Sahavas exist and there's nothing happening on the other end. Actually, a lot of our conversations and a lot of the committees of the younger people that are on those groups are like, well, we have to figure out a way to have this for the older generation. And that's just something to keep in mind. Michelle will create that at one point in her life, but just something to kind of let circle in your heart. All right, let's go to Diane and Terry.
I want to respond to something Joe said. Joe, yes, the LA Center does have a Sahavas for all ages, yet they only have a young adults discourses. And we signed up for it because we were young Baba lovers and we were told chronologically we were not welcome. And that really hurt. And we were very offended. And we literally wanted to take our toys and go home. And then we put our big girl panties on and we started to ask people of that age group why this was a necessity. And I'm going to explain it how my pea brain understood it. And that was that they need a space in the same way we have Mara's tea for women only, that sometimes there has to be a space where people of a certain common theme can be together so they can expand and not be taken over, if you will, by stronger personalities who feel wiser. I understood that I was able to wrap my brain around that. And I have heard about the idea of having an intergenerational Sahavas. I think the center in Myrtle Beach is ingrained to be an intergenerational Sahavas. With that, but if you go there now, there's not really programs like a Sahavas. So if there were a Sahavas with programs, that might be really, really an interesting way to go, and probably best planned by the people who live in Myrtle Beach and actually have the time to do such a thing. I would encourage you to do so. It's a fabulous idea. And I also want to say that I said this in my other group, every smart organization has a succession plan. Because when we die off, and we will soon die off as we age out, if we don't empower the people who are younger than us with organizational skills, and give room for them to take over and do their own, then we're going to be lost. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Diane. And also, if you want to hear Diane and Terry's podcast episode, they're on the podcast talking about this. All right, let's go to Elisa. You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Diane. That I like a lot of what you said there. And I love what Michelle was talking about too, because one of the things that I've been seeing and coming to more and more as we've been working with this is that, the older generation, I think what Jeff said is so true. It's like the Myrtle Beach Center is kind of every day is right for the older generation in a way, that we're sort of almost in a position of like, we don't see this divide maybe as much because we're sort of, to use that word, like the privileged ones, right? We're sort of like at the kind of the top. So it's like what I'm hearing and what I keep being surprised by is the impact that we're having. We may not necessarily be aware of at all times in terms of the young people feeling like they can just feel free to share their relationship with Baba, or feel free to be able to, have their perceptions or the ways they think things should go without feeling like they're going to do it wrong, or they're going to say something wrong, that it's not going to be accepted or heard. And so I'm starting to almost have this feeling like, I think we really just need to allow the young people to come together to talk about these issues, and then to really be able to kind of create spaces where we could listen and really hear what they're saying, to begin to create that safety, that it becomes easier to have these mixed Sahavas where we could be more natural with our own unique relationships with Baba. So I just wanted to say that that's what I just really am coming to more as time goes on, that we may not be always aware of the impact that how we've been encultured in Baba as an older generation is having on the younger people.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to Charles.
Thank you, Jay Baba. Well, this is a fascinating discussion. I wasn't going to say anything, but I feel Joe's comments really sort of sparked some thoughts. And I mean, generally, I very much agree with what he's saying about the need to be inclusive, and it is a little painful to hear if people feel excluded from something, as much as one is aware of how sometimes, as some of you have said, there needs to be a space for different groups for different reasons. Having said that, I mean, I'm, met Baba at a Sahavas and then saw him again at a Sahavas. I've never really, I wasn't with Baba much, but the only time I was with him was in a Sahavas setting. And so to me, it's a natural thing. How Baba worked was through Sahavas, and the center was created to be a place for Baba to come and be with his lovers. And yet, that seems to be a debate. I mean, no, really, it's like you bring that up and some people say, well, wait a minute, no, the center is, not for that and so forth. And I think that's because for a long time, when Baba wasn't coming physically, it kind of became a place where the old timers would come and take retreats. And then it kind of just morphed into a place where others would come and take retreats. And, there'd be programs, but not a Sahavas. I had a group of young people when I was teaching college who came, and it was like a Sahavas. And people were really unhappy about it, but Elizabeth loved it, and she gave them a talk, which was very rare for her. And it always seemed to me that the center is for Sahavas as much as it's for anything, not to take away from the importance of individual retreat. There needs to be more places for that. So I think one of the issues here is facilities. There needs to be a permanent kitchen. There needs to be housing for people who can take retreats, even if a Sahavas is going on, and so forth and so on. So I think one is a logistical issue of how we can make, if people have the will, make this more, and if Baba wishes, make it more Sahavas-like at the center more often. Because now they say, oh, if you close down the center, look what it does. And they actually closed down the center for a long time for a 3-day young adult Sahavas. It gets closed before and after, ends up being a big period where no one can come. So I get it that that's challenging, and challenging for staff and everything else. Having said that, though, I mean, the regional Sahavas, like the Southeast Gathering and others, often have had 2 tracks, the young people over here, the old people over here. I hope that's gone away. I haven't been in a while. That was terrible, I thought. And, if you're going to have a young Sahavas, youth Sahavas or whatever, okay. But to have tracks and so forth, that really does alienate people, I think, and keeps the younger people from having leadership roles in what they do at the Southeast Gathering. Instead of, okay, you get to plan what happens Thursday night. If you want to dance or whatever, yeah, fine. The rest is us, old people, because we know what. And that people, that keeps people apart. And it doesn't feel like Baba's way. So yes, I think there should be Sahavas at the center. And I don't think there should be any ages involved at all. I think there should be plenty of times for people of all ages, children all the way up to, older people to be, if they want to come to Sahavas. But I also respect the need to have the youth Sahavas. Certainly been a great gift. And I wouldn't want to, and Baba had kids separately when he was there in Sahavas to play and be, because they couldn't always be a part of what he was doing. So there was all kinds of reasons for some separation, and just to also say that the youth Sahavas with the young kids has morphed into two Sahavas as one. I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but there's really more. There's like 70 some workers and 60 some kids. Wait a minute, what's this? It's a Sahavas. It's two Sahavas. You know, one are people who are working, but they are also in Sahavas, and they are really enjoying connecting, and they come back again and again because of the experience of being with each other as well as being with the kids. So, but you know, it's a natural thing, and I just feel like we need to find new ways to do these things all together, and that lead me to say it takes leadership. And leadership has got to be younger people. And, you know, when I served on a master planning committee a number of years ago for 3 years for the center, all of us were in our 70s. And I looked around, I said, what are we master planning for? You know, the grave? I mean, really? We're the master planners for these people who are going to be here? No. Where are the people who are going to be here? Now we have some wisdom, but they need to be here, and they're not going to say the same things. And that's one of the fears people have. Oh, you know, we don't want that, whatever that is, from these young people. Well, we got to get over that and listen and let those folks make decisions and let those folks serve on boards and let those folks organize meetings and gatherings and such. And I think Baba will bring that about. That's how I feel. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Charles, for everything you said. I think you hit so many important points. And also to your point at the end, just to clarify, there are more young people on boards than there have ever been. There are more young people running events. And I think that something that gets happened is those young people get sidelined. Like I can speak for Michelle and myself, and we are on a lot of stuff. Like I'm on the Mayher Center's social media team. There's now a social media team, which is a huge thing. Michelle's on committees, and you know, amongst this conversation, also not acknowledging how far we've come from even when I was like, you know, 15, the acknowledgement that the young people are getting, there's also a huge amount of growth. And so honoring both sides of the coin. But thank you so much for everything you said, Charles. I think you pretty much drive everything right home. Okay, let's go to Michal.
That was funny. Yeah, I realized that when I was sitting in the Samadhi and we were all old people there. I said, whoa, what's going on? And I'm all for inclusiveness always. And it's not always easy to do. Not always everyone wants to be inclusive, and not always Baba wants it either. So here in Israel, it's a different story because there were no mandali here, at least when I came into Baba. Carrie Ben Shammai was not in the body. So we had only peeps into the mandali when we went to Mehrabad. But otherwise, we grew on the outskirts of the Baba land and the Baba world. So we grew up different. We grew up independently with Baba directly because we had no people to form a way for us. So each one of us has grown in the way that we have grown. So I don't know why you're putting your hands up, Jeff, but the first that got me, you know, the first thing that I got, which was not inclusive, was our Mera's tea. When they insisted that it would be only for women. And my inclusiveness always said, yeah, why not men as well? Because now Mera is not there, so people can be in the tea. But then I'm so enjoying that it is only a women's meeting. I'm so enjoying the energy that is in that, it's special energy. So I think that the young Sahavas, for young people, should be with their energy and with their own ways of developing and finding their Baba within and finding the support from their age group, from the peers. And there is a difference between having a Sahavas for young people then having them get into work in different places, in different centers, and doing things. So these are two things. One, letting them have their own meeting and their own shares. And on the other hand, is letting them express themselves as responsible participants in the Baba work, which is two different things. And so I'm very much for Sahavas of young people being together and sharing what they need to share, because they are different. They are the new humanity. They are very much the new humanity. I mean, the new humanity has started with all the people. And Charles, you so touched my heart telling the Bennett story, because you brought the point of Baba knowing that this is the generation, and by caressing her cheeks and saying she's going to be there, he opened the gate wide open for all these strange looking people with long hair and smoking and doing and believing in free love and going and coming to the Mandali and into Baba world. So it was very beautiful, because I remember that story and it touched my heart very much, but I didn't look at that point that you pointed out, that she was actually the key that opened that Baba was showing this is what's going to come. And so I think that all those people who were hippies and all those people also had these Sahavas together, right? All of you who were in this generation had these Sahavas together. You would be in Myrtle Beach together. You would meet Kitty and you would meet Elizabeth, but you would be together and you would share your own experiences together. So this was the Sahavas of young people. And now these young people are different. They're quite different. They were different than Elizabeth and Kitty. And these generational people are different. They're different. They have different way to look at things, different way to approach things. They have intuitions and creativity, like Charles said, things that we did not see. So they have to cook that together and find their own way to express it. And it's going to change the center quite a lot. And of course, the center is now more like Kitty and Elizabeth and how it was that time. But it's going to change. We are going to pass away. So we're going to pass away, and this generation is going to do a different thing. And I think they're going to do what Baba wants. Because why did he want sweet water there? Why was he so stressing that? It has to have agriculture. It has to have people being there and living there, not just making it, I don't know what's going to be there. Baba knows what's going to be there. So the same thing in Mehrabad, I felt always, after we lived in Lower Mehrabad and we went up to MPR, and Lower Mehrabad became a museum. And Baba's Merazad is a museum, and it always hurt my heart really bad that Lower Mehrabad, where Baba lived, and it was so full of life, and where we came and it was so full of life, is now a museum. So Myrtle Beach is not going to be a museum, and so it's going to be a living place where young people are going to make beautiful lives there and beautiful projects. And look at this beautiful young people here, and Margi, one of them, so beautiful, and this baby there over there. Just if Baba will give us this world, and if he will not give us this world, he will give us another world to do it. So so I think that these young people should get together and find their way of expressing and connecting. And maybe one of the days can be a day of integrational. One of the days in the Youth Sahavas can maybe be an integrational meeting like this. It's a very beautiful project. Thank you for doing it, Jai Baba.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. I think you say so much important stuff. And there's way more to come out of all of these conversations. I want to give Michael a chance. Michael was actually another one who was on the podcast and has got an episode as well if you want to listen. But so let's go over to Michael.
in our room, hey, everybody, I want to actually toss to Jake, if Jake, you're up for this. In our room, we ended up, in large part, talking about facilitating younger Baba lovers who have kids when they come to the center so that they can get some alone time with Baba at the center by maybe finding a way to bring younger people on board with babysitting and taking care of them. And there was even the idea of having grandmas for Baba. You know, one or two of the older women who are great with kids could take care of really tiny kids and, you know, 0 to 3 in a cabin. And other kids could be in another space. But Jake, you want to just jump in? Do you mind me tossing to you and just talk a little bit about that? Because you got 2 kids.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Really, what the idea was how wonderful it would be to have help with kids, or help with child care for families coming to the center, because it can be really challenging with having people help take care of kids this day for this generation of family that are coming through the ranks, particularly because, you know, for us, my experience, at least, I'll speak to that much. And I think it may extend to others, but my experience with raising children is there are fewer children in neighborhoods playing outside. It's harder to find children to connect to unless you're connected to specific sporting events or activities. There's much less free play available, and so there isn't as much, I think, freedom from parenting at times for parents as a result of that. And so to come down to the Baba Center with children is a wonderful and magical experience, but to have some support for the parents there is a delightful experience. And I've had the good fortune of knowing people at the Baba Center who are willing to help out and take the kids on rides around the center, or just have them, have fun with them for a little while. It's a wonderful experience. And so something that came up is the possibility of having, a dedicated service time for childcare on certain weekends, perhaps, such that families can know on this particular weekend there's going to be some childcare for their children. And another thing that came up out of that idea is then that during that time of volunteer childcare, there could even be, it kind of gives opportunity for the youngest generation of children in the Baba's community to come together and get to know each other and make connections that can potentially serve lifelong into youth Sahavas, into whatever comes next in their life. And so what a wonderful way to kind of bring everybody together in a service-oriented role and support families that are struggling with, raising children at the same time. So I'm not sure if there's anything I left out, Michael, that you wanted to bring back, but I'm happy to give it back to you to fill in anything that I missed or you think might be additionally important to share.
I think that was perfect. You summarized it really well, Jake. Thank you. It's such a wonderful point. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. I think that's also, that's another generation that we can start taking even that personal interest in, right? Like having someone connecting to those kids. Because I know those golf cart rides that Jake is talking about, those were done with Jeff. And that's part of the reason our generation is so messed up. Jeff would take us back into the woods, tie us to trees. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. But it was a really lovely time that made me as a kid fall in love with the center. And so, if that's something that the idea is to get this conversation started so that those facilities can be put in place. Because how amazing, I know, like the Southeast Gathering, Francis, who's my little brother, he gets so excited because he's going to see his friends and he can't wait to go and he wants nothing to do with mom, right? And so if that can be something that's just kind of circulating at the center all the time, how amazing would that be? So thank you so much for bringing that up. Let's go to SJ.
Hey, J Baba. I just want to say I'm at Sahavas right now. So that's very exciting for me because in the body, I do not qualify. My body age does not qualify for either Sahavas. And so I have been a music walla at Sahavas before, and it was a precious experience. And Charles spoke, and that was awesome. And the hand holding at the very end of it was awesome. And when Baba first came to me 10 years ago, the thing, like when Charles was speaking earlier, he was saying, like, give a word. about what Baba is to you. And my word is funny or fun. And so that's a huge aspect to me that is, it's so important. Fun is so important. And I love organized fun. And so I'm so thankful that you guys came up with this, and I'm happy to be involved. And I'm so happy to be involved that I participated in breakout rooms, which literally make me break out in hives normally. Like if you say breakout rooms, I'm out, bro. I'm not coming. Okay. And so like, I know it's a fear of intimacy, and I'm maturing past that. And I'm so thankful that I enjoyed the breakout rooms today. I enjoyed them. And so that was huge. And I'm here to learn also. And I think the thing that I wanted to share that I was curious about is that, like, I would love to have a Sahavas in person. Well, I'm so thankful for this one. I'm not sure what age group, but I want to be involved. I just include me. And I don't necessarily feel excluded. I have felt little feelings of that, but I also understand, you know, because squad, it's just important to be with your own little section of things in different ways. And we're all Baba lovers, and we all match right now. And I thought, you know, when someone shared about the center kind of being a Sahavas for older people all the time, I had never thought about that before. And I've kind of been thinking about it, but so I have always wanted there to be more fun on center. I'm not really into volleyball or ping pong. But I'm so glad some people think that's fun. But I was there over the 4th of July, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm so excited. We're going to like all watch the fireworks together. But then instead of there being like an organized gathering to watch the fireworks on our beach, there were signs up everywhere that said, absolutely do not go down and watch the fireworks on the 4th of July. And so I just wanted to share that blew my mind. And it was like the opposite of my Baba. And I know that's the rules, and I'm not in charge. And I'm literally not complaining. And I just thought that is curious. So instead of taking an opportunity to have organized fun, it's like blocked. So I thought that felt like sort of a generation gap thing. I might find out that it was someone literally my age that decided. I don't know. But it sort of brought that to my attention, that's what I love about Sahavas is the fun connections, the fun together. And so I thought that wouldn't it be nice, and I'm willing to participate in helping facilitate this. Wouldn't it be nice if there was more organized fun, freedom in that way? So thanks for letting me share.
Okay, so Raph, you're not using your icon, but I've seen you put your hand up many times. I'm not going to call on you again if you don't use your icon. He's had his hand up many times though, so I'll give it to him. Go ahead, Raph. You're muted. You're still muted. You're blowing it.
Am I still muted?
Okay, there you go.
Whoa, hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay, great. Yeah, first of all, thanks for calling me out. Second of all, I have to get to work really soon. That's the only reason I was, you know, a little impatient. I just have a few thoughts that I want to share before I go. Like for age groups that don't have their own Sahavas, I understand where they're coming from. I do agree that generally speaking, the vast majority of the year is, you know, for, you know, everybody, and it's, you know, predominantly older folk. But what I'm really sort of feeling from people who are saying, you know, they're feeling excluded, or, you know, like they wish they had something the same. I mean, it makes sense. It's like they don't have that consecutive time, that 3 days or that 5 days. And it's a shame that they can't have something like that to be a part of it. But it got me thinking, there is times on the center, namely Silence Day, Baba's birthday, Amrtithi, New Year's Eve, and Thanksgiving. These 5 days are like a great Sahavas that lasts 12 hours on the center. but it's bereft of what you get from consecutive time, 3, 4, 5 days. So like my thought is like, how can that focused energy, the question I'm asking is, how can that focused energy that comes on, say, a Baba's birthday or an Amritithi or a Silence Day or New Year's, how can that be brought to the center for everyone over consecutive days? And I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think that that's a question worth exploring. Like in India, for example, you got Amritithi for like 3, 4, 5 days, where just like everybody's there the whole time for 3, 4, 5 straight days. Maybe the center can have something like that. Maybe Amritithi is the best time to have something like that, from the 29th to the night of the 1st or something, where I don't know, but then there's that duplicity between who's staying on the center and who's visiting the center in this visiting hours. But maybe like one day there could be 3 straight days where nobody's staying in the cabins, but they're being used for like chai and games and this and that. And like there's 1,000 tents all spread around the center. Maybe this will happen in 30 minutes. I don't know, but like I get it. The point is that consecutive focused time where like Sahavas, company of Baba, like where for more than just 12 hours, you're in that space for consecutive days. I think everybody should have that experience, and it's worth trying to, think of possible ways. I just had one idea, but I think it's worth thinking about how to maybe go about making that. I don't know. These are my thoughts.
Your thoughts are appreciated, and I like that idea. So I see a bunch of other people's hands up, and I'm thinking, are you guys able to, because I want to continue this conversation without feeling like because I scheduled a break for a reason, so that people could like go to the bathroom, get something to eat, and we're going to talk more about this tonight. And so you guys that have your hands up, can you write down some of your ideas? Because I want to hear what you're saying.
How about you let them talk now, because they want to talk now. I think that the last hour and a half was taken up by 6 people, but I think if people now would agree to keep it like under 5 minutes, I think everybody should have a moment now, while it's fresh and hot.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to start. When you have these sahavas, there are teachers and people that would volunteer. It's like I paint. I come there every year with paints, and I'm looking for people that want to paint, and it's nothing organized. But I would volunteer to teach watercolor painting or whatever, to little kids, and they'd be doing something valuable. Like there could be music, or if they're having trouble with English as a second language, you could set up things that are, important. Anyway, so I volunteer. Chibaba.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you saying that. All right, let's go to Rich.
I want to keep this short because everybody needs a break, but that I'm kind of in a different situation here. I'm isolated, so the original focus of this is really appropriate. But what I feel about this is related to my Sunday night visits, which are pretty routine, consistent and all that. What I would actually like is something like this on a level where the breakout groups of 6 people or so happens, say 3 or 4 times, like 4 times in a couple hours, where people can get to know each other because we're all scattered at a distance. And I can see faces, but I don't know, who was born in Miami or who was from West Virginia. I don't know anything. But for me, the persona is a manifestation of Baba's work in the world somewhere. And that I like to get closer to by simply knowing a little bit about who's who, like Anne or Rebecca. Even I've always wanted to meet Elisa, but I'll never meet her. So, it would take a wild random visit. That's my idea. This can be extremely important for general, sharing with each other. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. And that's actually something that we can do now, right? That's a totally feasible idea. I can do that on a Thursday night chat. And so I'm glad you said that. We can try that, pilot it, see how it goes. This is all just trial and error. Let's go to Anne. Oh, Anne, you're muted.
Sorry, I was mistaking my camera for my microphone. That's definitely an old fart mistake. We talked a little bit about it in the last session, or maybe both of them. We touched on the playfulness of the Baba world. And Raphael had talked about bringing this kind of toy monkey with a thing that hung down with Velcro straps, and he hung it in his house in different places. And every time it bumped into him, initially, I think he called out Baba at first, and then it was every time he bumped into it, he'd remember Baba. But I'm also thinking, what if not only in person, but maybe we can devise something like playfulness online? And I'm thinking there are a couple of comedians, I can't think of their names, Penn and Teller, is it? And they came out with a book years ago, and they had this game that they would play, because being on the road and staying at Denny's and what used to be Howard Johnson's over and over again gets really boring. And they would order these plates, there'd always be parsley on them. And they developed this game that if you looked away, the whole object was not to have parsley on your plate. So if you looked away, somebody would sneak the parsley onto your plate. But little playful things like that people could take part in or not. I mean, I remember being at a Sahavas for Silence Day out in California years ago, and we went swimming and we're playing, you know, the game Marco Polo in the swimming pool. We started playing that, only it was Mayor Baba. And it was all different ages, old people, young people. But I think especially with COVID and with all that's going on in the world, we've kind of, I won't speak for everybody here, but I know I have, and I feel a sense of this in the world, the sense for silliness, we've kind of lost touch with that. It's like, oh my God, we're on a knife's edge here. We have to be serious. So I would love, maybe we could have a session of brainstorming stuff. And I hope I'm not calling her out on it. Wendy Connor has a huge background in improv. I have a little. I want to cite one reference, Viola Spolin's Improvisation for the Theater, her introductions to the book, which you can read on Amazon. It's like Baba wrote these things for how to create a way of being playful. So anyway, I hope that was brief enough, but I'd like to salt and pepper in a little silliness, improvisational, as well as maybe stuff that we just seed in. People could partake or not.
No, I think this is a conversation that really needs to happen, because the Mayer Center sometimes doesn't know if it should gear more towards like retreat atmosphere, or, you know, that we have Sahavas, but then also some people come for retreat. And really what I'm hearing from everybody is that they just want more Sahavas. And, you know, Linda, who is the main coordinator for the youth Sahavas, she shares that, you know, in the pain body, the most painful thing someone can experience is exclusion, because the soul knows that we're the same. And so when we feel we're excluded from something, that's the most painful thing we can experience. And so really what's coming out of this conversation is we just need more Sahavas somehow. Like Charles said, there are facilities issues, but altogether we now know that that's a collective need of our community. All right, let's go to Vijay, and then we'll close up for this afternoon and come back in just a little bit for more.
Hi, Jai Baba. And it's my first Sahavas. So far I've been attending Zoom meetings and all, but it's the first kind of Sahavas I've been attending, and really I appreciate. I enjoyed it very well, and I certainly, irrespective, I feel that irrespective of ages, the people should be identified, those who can add some values, inspire others. There are definitely talents are there. They should be invited. And there should not be age factor, or because Baba likes energy. He said that he likes the energy. So it may be irrespective of ages, those who have that energy level and talent. Then what Motto has said, that there should be those events like Amar Tithi and all. I remember last year I was there at the Meher Center. No one was there. I was there. Somehow Baba, because every time I attend Amar Tithi here in India, and so last year I was there in US. So I was missing, and I went to Myrtle Beach, 31st. and no one was there. So it was kind of, so I certainly appreciate if events like that, Amar Tithi is such an important event, when Baba dropped his body. So that should be celebrated some way. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
all. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Margi, and Jeff and Peter taking lead and arranging Sahavas. I really thank you all. Yeah. Jai Baba. And good night.
Jai
I'm
Baba.
feeling sleepy. Yeah.
Jai Baba. And thank you to all who joined. And again, so we're gonna have a little break, and then at 5, sorry, I'm doing West Coast to East Coast times. At 5 p.m. East Coast time, we're going to come back on, and then Ayana Lahi is going to do just like a little Baba meditation to start us out for 20 minutes. And then I'm sure you'll have more thoughts, right, when you go make your food, and then we can continue this conversation or just talk about Baba stuff, whatever we want to talk about. It's open. I'll be there to facilitate that. Elisa, is there anything else that you want to close up with? Oh, what? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Okay. No, I said, I think this has really just been such a full event, and I encourage anybody who didn't get a chance to talk to jot down what they were going to say right before so you don't lose it, because we'd love to hear from everybody. This is very exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Margi, for your excellent facilitation.
It is very exciting, very beautiful. Thank you very much.
So why don't we close out with a beloved God prayer and then a moment of silence, and Avatar Mer Baba Ki Jai. Beloved God, help us all to love you more and more and more and still yet more, until we become you, and help us all to hold
Baba's Dharma until the very end.
Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Margi, should we log off now and then come back?
Yeah, so it's the same Zoom